You know, it's been a week and a half since People magazine broke the story that Oscar winner Sandra Bullock had adopted an African-American baby. Since then, the web has been on fire. Most people applaud her, but some are against her. Like this comment. Check it out. It says, quote, "I do not approve of white folks adopting black kids. What's the ulterior motive behind it? Are they trying to create a new class of confused little Oreo cookies? Black kids with white values who will value whiteness above all else and be ashamed or against blacks and blackness? So what is wrong with mixed race or transracial adoption? What's wrong with it?" We spoke with Wendy Walsh, a former TV journalist and a psychologist, and Lisa Marie Rollins, a transracial adoption expert. I started by asking them to explain the case against mixed race adoption.
One of them is definitely whether or not white families have the education and are capable of assisting black children in coping with racism. But the other thing really is also something larger that has to do with the preservation of black families and the circumstances that actually allow children to be put up for adoption. And I think that a lot of people are angry. The reason why you're seeing some of this anger around it is because I think that there are actually African-American families that are available, but the social welfare system isn't really set up for them to adopt black children, or kinship if there are aunts or uncles or extended family members who are available. There's not financial resources for them. So I think that's also part of what people are upset about.
Ms. Walsh, what do you make of this? What's the case against it?
Well, I think, right away, people will see, oh, is this another Hollywood celebrity carrying a black baby instead of a white purse dog? So they're worrying that it may be a fashionable trend. The truth is, adoptions are colorblind. You get what you get if you say that you will take whatever. And thank goodness these liberal, progressive, wealthy people are able to take any child in need and shower them with love. And I think race should really be only examined if you're over 40. You need to think about how you think about race, because the younger generation doesn't see race the way perhaps my generation or older generation did. We live in a global world where we have a biracial president, where some of the most famous and wealthy celebrities in the world are people of color. I happen to have biracial children. They don't self-identify
That's what I was going
black
to ask
or white.
you. I was going to ask you in this, because children can be cruel. So when you're a child, when you're in school, people make fun of you. Oh, you don't look like your mom and dad, or they may call you names. They call you an Oreo cookie, or whatever it is. Once you become adult, you go, thank goodness someone saved me. So my question is, then what is wrong? And I see you sort of cringing there, or squinching a little bit, Miss Marie. Do you not believe that's so?
Yeah, it's Miss Rollins. But yeah, I guess what I'm responding to is the notion that adoption is colorblind. And I think that's one of the things that AFAD talks back to and actually really tries to support families in really thinking about when they're adopting, is that race really does matter. And it really does matter with the youth that I'm working with now. Even I hear constant stories of when they're living in situations where they're isolated from the black community and they're adopted to places like Kansas or Iowa, a lot of the places where the Haitian adoptees are going, that they are called names in school.
But would you rather them be in foster care instead of then in a loving home?
Well, what I think that the issue with that is that there's an assumption that that's the only option. And I think that there are multiple options other than just a child living in foster care.
I think there are probably multiple options, but I mean, I've seen the number of children who are up for adoption and who end up in foster homes, some of them, and then others don't. And then you become adults, and a lot of them become adults, and they don't have any parents. They have no rearing and no upbringing. Go ahead, Dr. Walsh.
Well, yeah, I've heard that there are 31% of children in foster homes are African American, and yet that represents only 15% of the general population. So, yes, there are definitely proportionally more children of color in foster care. Now, you know what? You have to think, I understand what you're saying, Ms. Rollins, about zip code being important. If you live in a homogeneous place, you're going to have to make some life changes to make sure that your child is exposed to some kind of diversity. I've moved around the world with my children, actually, and we lived in two homogeneous places. One happened to be Boca Raton, Florida, where we went to a small little Lutheran school, and I felt that my family was more of a welcome curiosity. Everyone was very kind to us, and I loved it. And the other place was Florence, Italy, by the way, a very homogeneous place where only the African street merchants had not problems, but a lot of great curiosity. Where did you get that black baby? They would say to me, thinking I had adopted it. But I really think, you know, if you live in a zip code that's very diverse, I live in Venice Beach, California, which we call Berkeley on the Beach. I actually
disagree. I actually disagree. I think that I live in San Francisco.
You'll get the last word. Go ahead.
I live in San Francisco, and I live in Oakland, where it's extraordinarily diverse. It's one of the most diverse cities in the nation, and I am constantly bombarded with white families who have adopted black children who live completely culturally isolated life. It's not just about geography. It's about whether or not you're connecting your child to the black community.
Here's the thing. You know, I understand what you're saying. And we've got to move on. When you say culturally, you know, what does that mean? There are things that were cultural back in the 1940s and the 1950s and the 1960s that aren't necessarily cultural now. Maybe a new culture is a culture of people who are Americans, who are of all races, instead of just black, white. We had this whole issue when we talked about census. There are so many things, so many differences in people these days that it doesn't, I mean, I don't think that there are very few people here in this country who are truly African American, because most of us are mixed. And there are very few people in this country who are truly European or truly white, because most people are mixed again. And I think that we're heading towards that. I understand what you're saying, but I think we have to sort of, hang on one second, let me finish.
Sure.
I think we have to define what is cultural. I think we need a new definition of that. Go ahead, I'll let you finish.
Yeah, and actually I don't disagree with what you're saying. I absolutely believe that there are new ways to redefine race, there are new ways to define culture that are happening now, and that communities are much more multicultural now than they were. But I also argue that if you are a white parent and have a child of color, and you are living a life that doesn't include people of color, either as an adult, or if your community is only children of color with other transracial adoptive families, there's a message that sends to your children about your comfort level with people of color.